Man, it is so good to be just here and worshiping with you all. And I don't know, it is good for my soul and good for my heart to be part of this church. And I'm just so grateful for that. We are continuing this week. This is week 5 of Summer Refresh. And one of the things we do here at Countryside as part of our summer traditions is we don't hold back in the summer. We don't take summer and say, let's just take it easy and just kind of like work through whatever rhythms are happening in life. We take time during the summer to think about the way we live our lives the rest of the year. So whether we do that through like summer mixtape or we spend time paying attention to the way we're living our lives during the rhythms of summer so that when the rhythms of the school year kick off, we're ready to live differently as a result. So Summer Refresh is a walk through the book of Proverbs with the idea of saying there are areas in our lives that need a refresh. Specific areas where it's like if we approached this differently, then life would play out differently. We could honor God more and more and more with our lives. And so this is an opportunity to take hold of some new refresh in our lives. And so we come this morning, we're in Proverbs chapter 4. And so much of this series so far over these first few weeks has been marked by conversations about choices and wisdom, and the way that we approach choices, and the way that we make choices, and how we approach life with wisdom, and how do we discern the way forward. And so we come to Proverbs chapter 4, and it's very tempting for us. Our instinct is to say, it must be about a choice, especially because Proverbs 4 is primarily talking about paths. And so we think about paths, and we think about choices and wisdom, and our instinct is to say, it must be about choosing the right path. Right, we could come to Proverbs 4 and think we're at this state, like we're at a fork in the road and we're trying to decide between one path or another path. And there is a path choice in the conversation, but there's actually more that's happening than that. We might come to this conversation with, well, which path should we choose? And where will that choice take us? And how do we choose wisely? And these are good, and these are reasonable questions. But thousands of years ago, God inspired the authors of Proverbs to write down specific instructions for his people. And when God was inspiring this chapter of Proverbs, and pen was put to paper, and the author of Proverbs is writing these instructions down, what God had in mind was something maybe more than what we've expected this morning, something that we might not be expecting, because it's about paths and choices. But what God's getting at through this section of Proverbs is actually how we are walking out our faith. Right? Not just what path, we're going to deal with path choices, but the way we are walking the path that we have chosen matters. Right? Our approach to the journey matters. So it's not just that we've chosen a path or that we're choosing a next step along the way in our journey. We're talking specifically about the way we're walking it out. And so our refresh this morning is this. Maybe it's time to refresh how you're walking out your faith. Maybe it's time to refresh how you're walking out your faith, to actually spend time thinking through and paying attention to the way you are walking it out. Not just, I have chosen the right path, right? We can actually be on the right path. We're going to see this play out. We can be on the right path and still approach the journey in the wrong way. In Proverbs 4, we're going to find 2 pictures of walking it out, 2 pictures of conditions or circumstances for the way that this gets walked out. One is walking in increasing light. It's like the sun is rising and it's getting brighter and brighter and brighter as we go. And 2 is walking it out, but the darkness is getting deeper and deeper and deeper. We don't get to choose. We know this. When we walk a path, we don't get to choose all of the conditions of the journey directly. Right? We don't get to choose the circumstances of our lives and the things that we experience along the way and the conditions in which we are journeying on this path. But the way we walk shapes at least some of the conditions of the journey. How you're walking it out determines where you're walking it out takes you. Which then, if we're talking good and reasonable questions, then brings us to 2 more. Like what if we look at our lives and we look at the current approach to life and we say, well, this is how I approach life. What if we actually paused for a moment and we said, if I continue to approach life like I currently approach life, where does that approach take me? When it reaches its inevitable conclusion, if I trace a line from where I am to the end of my life, and if I keep approaching life like this, day after day after day, if I settle into this approach and commit to this approach, where does life take me when it reaches its ultimate conclusion? Right? Not a question we ask all the time. It is a good and reasonable question to ask. The second question that's good and reasonable in this moment will be a question specifically related to choices, specific choices. So like we look and we have a decision that we're trying to make, and we look at the choices that are in front of us, and we begin to make a decision. Wouldn't it be helpful for us to pause in the middle of that decision process before we commit to a path, before we commit to a step, to say, if I make this choice this way, right, with this perspective, with this set of values, with these priorities in place, with this framework for making this decision, if I make this choice this way, and then I make the next choice that I face with the same parameters, with the same commitments, the same priorities, the same perspective, the same framework for making a decision, and then I make the next choice with that same framework, with those same priorities, with the same things at the foundation of my decision making. If I make decision after decision after decision in this way, with this approach, what does my life start to look like over time? Right? So then it's not just this one decision, but it's the framework and the patterns that are being developed as we make our choices. Where does it actually take us? The first section of Proverbs 4 describes two paths that a person can walk: the path of the righteous and the path of the wicked. And as the author of Proverbs writes this first part of the chapter, is laying out specifically what the path of the wicked looks like. But then halfway through chapter 4 of Proverbs, there's this beautiful transitional statement. And it's this: but the path of the righteous. The path of the righteous. And remember, it's not just the path the righteous chose, it's also how the righteous are walking that path that they have chosen wisely. Verse 18 of Proverbs 4, but the path of the righteous is like the light of dawn, which shines brighter and brighter until full day. The way of the wicked is like the deep darkness. They do not know over what they stumble. So a couple important definitions on the front end of this passage this morning: path and way, right? The path of the righteous, the way of the wicked, is probably best understood as life, right? The life of the righteous, the life of the wicked plays out in a certain way. And then light and dark. Light, right? It feels like maybe it's like light makes things easier, which to a certain extent it does. But light doesn't mean easy. Any of us who have ever started hiking a trail in the morning before the sun has risen knows that there are times when the sun rises and you can actually see the path ahead of you clearly. It actually is revealing some real challenges ahead, right? Just because it's light doesn't mean it's easy. But darkness always makes it harder, right? Whatever it is. It could be the easiest path in the world and you're stumbling over things that you don't even know what it is that you're tripping over. Darkness always makes it harder. So these two verses give us footing for the rest of this passage, because it's not just choosing a path, it's living in light or stumbling in the dark. And so when it comes to making choices, it's a walking it out choice. A question of how do we actually want to live our lives? Living in the way of wisdom, which is walking a path that gets increasingly brighter as we go. Or living in the way of the wicked, which is walking a path that gets darker and darker with every step. And this is one of those decisions when it's laid out like that, so simply, and it's coming out of the text that God has preserved for us, his word, and we read it and we're like, well, of course I'd choose light. Right? Of course I don't want to be stumbling over things that I can't even identify and have my life be more and more difficult than it needs to be. It seems like an easy choice. And if we were only or simply choosing conditions, it would be. We would say, I would prefer to walk in the light. I would prefer to not stumble over things that I can't even identify because it's so dark. If we're simply choosing conditions, it would be simple. But we're choosing, and this matters, we're choosing an approach to life that leads to certain conditions. Right? There is a lag between the choice that we're making and the outcome. Right? We are making a decision that will play out, that will shape the future, will shape the conditions that we walk towards and walk into. And with that lag, we can make decisions poorly. It's not as clear as I'm going to choose a path or choose a way it's light or dark. I'm going to choose, and then that choice leads to certain conditions, but there's a lag, and so we don't always feel it right away. And it makes that decision a little more complicated for us. To ramp it up just a little bit more, we are making choices about future conditions while dealing with current conditions. Right? We're making choices about future conditions for our lives while dealing with all of the conditions that we're currently living in. Years ago, when our kids were little, we had an opportunity to take a camping trip just outside of Rocky Mountain National Park in Colorado. And so the way that our travel schedule worked out, we got to the campsite that we had reserved really, really late in the day. Like dark. And here I am, little kids, and Julie and I, and we're pulling in, and we get to the area where we're going to camp, and it's like we're following a map. Well, the map itself didn't have any kind of like indication of elevation gains or anything like that. And we're going and we're following this route, but the route isn't like a flat, like a piece of paper. It's like this. And so we're climbing our car. We're like switchbacks in our little minivan, and we're working our way up, and we're working. And I'm like, I am so tired. And I know everything that has to happen once we get to camp, to set up camp with like toddler to like elementary school. It's going to be some work. And they want to sleep, and I want to sleep. And we're working our way up, and we finally make it to this campsite, and we're like all the way. We're like past where any other campers are, and we're like, okay, set up camp in the dark, headlamp, working our way through getting this all set up. Go to bed, sleep, the sun rises. Unzip the tent, open that flap, and it's Rocky Mountain National Park, just spread out before the sun is rising, and it's like the most beautiful morning view I've ever had, the most beautiful sunrise I've ever experienced in my life. It's just laid out, Rocky Mountain National Park in all of its splendor. And that climb in the dark and the setting up the camp in the dark and all those pieces all of a sudden didn't seem so difficult anymore because now present conditions, daylight, on a beautiful view that was totally worth working our way through some of the hard stuff that we had to work through to get to this. We're making choices about future conditions while dealing with current conditions. And that's complicated sometimes. And it gets in our head. But the author of Proverbs, God doesn't stop here. We're talking about conditions and the way we approach life, but now he moves to actually like engaging our whole selves in this journey. We talk here at Countryside as a staff a lot about mature movement, which means we move with purpose, that the parts work together, that we move together and we operate in a mature way as compared to like, if you've been around an infant and all of a sudden it's like random movements and like there's no difference functionally between a hand and a foot. We'll suck on our toe just as happily as we'll suck on our thumb, right? It's like, that's not mature movements. But to say, what does it look like for the body to function in a mature way, for movements to be purposeful, athletic, graceful, intentional, fast, sustainable. All the parts working together. And it's easy when things aren't going well for us to blame the path. Well, look, this road is harder than we thought it was going to be. The path is more difficult than we expected, or we blame the conditions. But more often than not, it's actually an us issue. We look at our lives and we're like, actually, this isn't about the path. This is about me making life harder for myself than I need to. It's actually not about the conditions completely that I'm sorting all of this out. It's actually a me issue. And in that is some really good news, is that God is not afraid of dealing with the us issues in our lives. The stuff and the mess that we bring to the equation, God is not afraid of. He doesn't run away from dealing with the issues that are us issues. For me, I have understood this as a father who now is parenting, and as much as you can parent adults, like parenting adults, right? Some of us have moved into that stage, and it's like, look, I can't ground you. I can't make you do things. I just hope you make great choices. But then every once in a while, one of my kids will reach out and say, Dad, I'm trying to sort this out. And it's like life and light, and like, let's have this conversation. Let's work our way through this set of circumstances. Dad mode, engaged. Let's do this. Let's have the conversation. And it's delightful, and it brings joy. And so for us to look, and we have a Heavenly Father who says, I want to walk with you and deal with the you issues in life. I want to help you be everything I created you to be. Why would we think that God, who identifies himself as our Father, who loves us, who sent his Son so that we could live our lives in the way that God intended for us to live our lives, in relationship with him, like he intended us to live our lives in relationship with him, why would we think that God would not want to have anything to do with the us issues in our lives? It's not a burden. It's a joy. But we talk about walking this path. We talk about the journey that's in front of us, and we recognize that it's going to take all that you are and more. Certainly not less. Some of us, we engage in this journey that we call like our spiritual lives, or this relationship with God, this journey with and toward God. And we're like partially engaged. Engage it with part of our lives and sort of leaning into it and sort of taking hold of it. Certainly not less than all we are. Certainly not only certain parts of our lives. The call is to approach life, to walk it out with all you are, which uses the parts that make us all we are to help us see it. And so the author of Proverbs writes this out and actually like starts to play almost like it feels like a kid's book. It's like here's the various like parts of what makes you who you are and how they engage in the path. So my son, be attentive to my words, incline your ear to my sayings. Like if we were doing this with our kids upstairs, we might actually have our kids grab their ears so they can remember what we're talking about. Like incline your ear to my sayings. Let them not escape from your sight. Keep them within your heart, for they are life to those who find them and healing to all your flesh. Keep your heart with all vigilance, for from it flow the springs of life. The all you are conversation, this is just the first piece of it. It's broken into two parts. First, the things we allow into our lives. And then second, how it's expressed and revealed out of our lives. So it starts with making choices about what has our attention. Ears. The ears of the righteous person. The ears of the righteous person are in tune to God's voice, are listening to what God has to say, care about what the God of the universe, who put all of this into motion, has to say to them about how they should live their lives. The eyes of the righteous person are fixed on the things of God, right? Ears and eyes can take in all sorts of distractions, can take in all sorts of noise, can have to deal with all kinds of things that take our attention away from God. And yet the righteous person tunes their ear with all the noise and the whispers and the chaos of life to God. They tune their eyes, they fix their eyes on him. And the heart of the righteous person is guarded so that what comes out of it is life. A righteous, a wise person says, I will keep with all vigilance my heart, because there is so much that flows out of my heart. And when things are revealed, I want to deal with them because I'm guarding with all vigilance my heart. In life, there is more than one way to get lost. Right? There's darkness that obscures. Like we might be driving somewhere or hiking somewhere and it gets dark and we can't seem to find our way forward. But there's also there's darkness that obscures, but then there's distractions that have our attention, that keep us from like staying on the path that we're supposed to be on. A few years ago, I was on a hiking trip in the mountains, again, Colorado, hiking with Wes Smith and a few friends. My wife was with us as well, hiking Mount Princeton. And so we started out in the morning, and we're hiking this 14,000 foot mountain, and we're working our way up the trail. And we had done some research, of course, before we started on a trip like this, and it said on the trail there'll be a spot, like the main trail takes you up to a different mountain, but there's a clearly marked turn off of the trail that takes you to Princeton. Okay, here we go. We will watch for that clearly marked turn that takes us to Princeton. And so we start off and we're talking, and it's like we don't get to spend a lot of time together, so we're talking and catching up with each other, and we're walking this trail, and all of a sudden we start to think, that clearly marked thing probably should have shown up by this point. And we're like, well, you know what? We haven't seen it yet. Let's just keep going. And so we're going and we're going and we're going, and it's like we get to a point where we actually make it. We're actually climbing now. We're not just approaching a mountain, we're climbing a mountain. We must have found our way onto the trail somehow. This is great. Like, here we are. So we're going, and we finally summit after a lot of work, most of the morning work. We summit this mountain. And we get to the top of this mountain, and we are exhausted, and we're ready for a break, and we're ready to celebrate making it to the top of the mountain. And we get to the top, and we pop up onto the summit of the mountain, and we take in an extraordinary view of Mount Princeton. We have a picture of this, actually, I think, somewhere. There we go. So eventually, this was our first adventure, and then this is actually the top of Mount Princeton. Like, looking back, a friend of ours took this picture. So you can see we made it to the first mountain first and got a really good view of the rest of the journey for us. We got distracted. What was clearly marked, I would take issue with clearly marked. We actually found, on our way back, we found that clearly marked notation on the trail, and it was literally a pile, like a line of rocks with like a little arrow at the end of it of rocks on a rocky trail, right? So it's like, okay, like we were distracted, but we also were looking for clearly marked, and this is like literally just like somebody sort of like put some rocks in a vast, like a latterly direction. It's not exactly clearly marked. But I'll also be doing mountain time this week, so maybe we could have some adventures together. I think James got you guys lost a few weeks ago. I'll get to like help some of us get lost and have an adventure. There's only so lost we can get on Lookout, by the way. So you just keep going somewhere. Eventually you'll hit a neighborhood and it'll be perfectly fine. But what has our attention shapes our approach to life. And our approach to life is revealed and expressed in some specific heart issues. In Proverbs 4, there's 3 specifically named. 1, put away from you crooked speech, and put devious talk far from you. If we were doing this lesson with the kids, we might point to our mouths and say it matters how we use our mouths, how we use our tongues, the things that we speak, and the way that we speak. It says, let your eyes look directly forward and your gaze be straight before you. Ponder the path of your feet, then all your ways will be sure. Do not swerve to the right or the left, but turn your foot away from evil. The mouth. Out of the heart, the mouth speaks. And the words of the righteous are honest, and they bring life to those around them. The mouths of the wicked speak crooked and devious words, and they can't be trusted. The eyes. This is the second time in this passage we've talked about the eyes, but there's 2, in this one specific sentence, there's 2 different words for eyes and gaze. And what the author is getting at is this unblinking tunnel vision on where you're headed. So it's the second time eyes are mentioned in this passage. First, as a means of input. What is it that we're taking in? What are we allowing into our lives? But what are we looking at? And this second instance of eyes is us saying, I will fix my eyes on where I'm heading. I will gaze, I will stare unblinkingly at the path that's ahead of me. So it's input, and then also a means of moving forward. What has our attention has gravity in our lives. We will inevitably move toward what we're looking at. So into that, the Proverbs speak, let your eyes look directly forward. And then our feet. Do you ever consider where your feet are taking you? Do you ever pause and ponder the path of your feet? Where is it that you are taking me? Are you moving with purpose? or are you drifting through life? There is a big difference between swerving through life from thing to thing and intentionally turning your foot away from evil. One is aimless and reactionary, and the other is purposeful. And we are sorting this out in a world that is constantly seeking to distract us, to get us to move aimlessly through life, to the right and to the left. Fix your eyes and move with purpose. When I was in high school, there was a rite of passage in our youth camp growing up. And it was Larry Basinger, who was one of the counselors at camp. And he would do this every year. He would, on a particular night of camp, he would gather the guys in the guys' dorm in high school. And so we looked forward to this when we were in junior high because we had heard about this devotional that Larry would give. And it was the same devotional every year. Like we basically had it memorized by this point. There were people who would mimic Larry giving this devotional because he had done it over and over and over again. And kids are awesome at making adults feel uncomfortable and awkward and all those kinds of things. And but they would come, and Larry would come in, and he would, in the dorm, the dorm for the high school, the boys, he would come in and click the flashlight on so we could see his face in the dorm. And he would say, ponder the path of your feet. Ponder the path of your feet. And then he would begin to describe the importance of paying attention to the way we're living our lives and the decisions that we're making. And so over and over again, I wish the points of his devotional are lost to time and memory, but ponder the path of your feet. This annual tradition, these words that echo in the lives of young men as we sort out life and we make decisions, and we go back to high school and we have to make decisions about where our feet will take us, and will we turn from evil or will we drift aimlessly? Isn't it interesting how we only tend to ponder our paths when we're having trouble sorting out the way forward? Isn't that interesting? That we only take time to pay attention to where our feet are taking us when we're running into difficulty about the way forward. But God didn't create us to run on autopilot. God didn't save us to put us on autopilot. God created us with the ability to make decisions about the way we live our lives. God created us in love so that we could choose to love him. God created us with free will so that we could choose to live as he intended. Not put us on autopilot, not give us no say in the matter. And so it gives God great joy when we choose to walk the path in the way that he designed us for, in the way that he designed us to live it. Maybe it's time to refresh how you're walking out your faith. As we sort out the way forward from where we are, we'll do this kind of three ways. We'll start with one really, really important question, and then two encouragements for the journey. Here's the question. Does this choice lead to a brighter walk or plunge me deeper into darkness? Does this choice lead me to a brighter walk or plunge me deeper into darkness? Talk about pondering the path of our feet. Talking about making decisions and trying to make decisions in a way that honors God, that's in the way that God intended us to live our lives. With this choice, does this choice take me into greater light? Or does it plunge me deeper into darkness? That's a big question. That's a kind of question that actually helps us make decisions that actually take us where we actually want to go. Does this choice, if I make the choice that I'm thinking about making right now, this decision, we make choices all the time. Does this choice and the way that I'm making this choice lead me into a brighter time or plunge me deeper into darkness? To ponder like we don't often ponder. To wrestle like we don't often wrestle. To pay attention to the way we are approaching life, how we are walking the path. It's a gift. And what God can do with that when we place that before him, we say, God, help me make the kind of choice that leads to a brighter walk instead of plunging me deeper and deeper into darkness. To make a decision with present circumstances and present conditions about future conditions that take us where we actually want to go. That's the question. Some of us need to write that down and make that question part of the rhythms of our lives. Here's the two encouragements. The first one is this, is it's an all you are walk, which also means it's an all you are refresh. What God wants to do, the walk that he desires for you to walk, the life that he desires you to live, it's an all you are life. It's an all in, it's a with all that you are, every part of who you are. You can walk through this passage again and recognize that it's in its own way this comprehensive picture of all that makes us who we are. And so it's an all you are walk, which means also when God says, I will restore you, and I will refresh you, and I will bring life to your flesh, the all you are. That if it's an all you are walk, it's an all you are refresh. God is here for it, and he wants to do it. So the things that we're holding back, the things that we think God doesn't want to have anything to do with us, about the things that are clearly an us issue, it's an all you are. God says, I know it's a you issue, but I'm here for it. It delights me. It gives me joy to be able to deal with you in this way, to approach the issues that show up in your life because I care about all you are. It's an all you are refresh. So for some of us, we're wrestling with this, am I going to go all in? Or are there things that God doesn't want to deal with? It's an all you are life. And it's an all you are refresh. Encouragement 2 is that God doesn't just care about your obedient feet. He cares about your heart. God doesn't just care about your obedient feet. He cares about your heart. He cares about the path. He cares about the walk that you're walking. He cares about the way that you're paying attention to and the choices that you're making about your life. But it's not that he just cares that you do what he wants you to do. God cares about your obedient feet, but he doesn't just care about your obedient feet. He cares about your heart. The place from which choices show up. The place from which we relate to each other. The place from which we relate to God. It's like, God's like, I don't just want you to be obedient with your feet. I care about your heart. But we know that sometimes one area of life can actually lead the others. So sometimes it's like my heart is not in this, but yet my feet will be obedient. Sometimes it's like my heart is in this, but the steps are hard. So my heart's going to lead my feet into obedience. Sometimes it's my feet going to take some steps, and then God's going to form me along the way. Sometimes it's ears and eyes. It's like my heart, but then the things that I'm paying attention to, the things I'm listening to, the voices that I'm listening to, the things that I'm allowing to have my attention. Right? This can be good and bad. It can lead us. We pay attention, and it can form our heart. It can lead to obedient feet. But one can drag the others away too. Like, is it an eyes issue? Is it what I'm looking at that's causing me to live in darkness? Is it what I'm listening to? The advice, the inputs that are coming into my life? Is it that? Is it the things that I'm setting my heart on? I'm not keeping my heart with vigilance. My heart, the gravity that's pulling my heart is not towards the things of God. Is it a feet issue? Am I going where I shouldn't go, or am I not going where I should go? So we'll close remembering two promises. The path of the righteous is like the light of dawn, which shines brighter and brighter until full day. And ponder the path of your feet, then all your ways will be sure. Maybe it's time to refresh how you're walking out your faith. Could also be you came this morning, and actually the refresh that you need it's the refresh, the biggest, most important refresh of your life. You talk about stumbling and wandering in darkness and trying to make good choices, but you keep getting tripped up over things you can't even identify. It's like, I just know that what I'm doing isn't working. There's a refresh made available through Jesus Christ that brings light into the darkness. That deals with the heart stuff. It deals with the all you are stuff. The refresh isn't just in the way that we approach life. It's actually life. And so this morning, we're going to talk about light and dark and choices and approach to life. We've got to talk about this choice. So I beg you, if you have not yet made a decision to give your life to Jesus, to trust him with your path and with the choices of your life, to allow his light to shine into the darkness of your life, I beg you to resolve this. I beg you to take God up on this invitation to a forgiven life and life in him made possible through Jesus Christ. We can talk a lot about all sorts of refreshes, but this is the one that matters, right? This is the one that changes everything for you. And so in a moment,